Hi, and welcome back to Pushbox Banter. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig. And today we're here to talk about.
Emilia Romagna Grand Prix.
Yes. That's great. Yeah, so we had the Grand Prix in Italy, Imola.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a lot of things because there's a lot of history that surrounds this track. And then also we've got to have an interesting race. It's a little bit different because it's an old school track. It's been around since I believe the 50s. So yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool that you mentioned that. Yeah, it was made in the 50s, I guess after the war, to kind of spice up the economy and things like that. The Italians decided to create this track, and they named it after the founder of Ferrari, so Enzo and Dino International Circuit, right? It was made in the 50s. They had a lot of motorcycle races there, and then a few non-championship F1 races. So technically the first true F1 race didn't really happen until 1980s. But before then, there was a couple races that happened. Again, non-championship F1 races in the 60s and officially in 1981.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting track because when you look it up and you look at the past winners, you're like, okay, they show Hamilton in 21, Verstappen, or actually Hamilton in 20, Verstappen 21 and 22, and then nothing in 23. And I'm like, wait a minute, this track's been around for a long time. All they're doing is talking about how old it is and how much history's behind it. And it used to have different names. It was like the San Marino Grand Prix.
Correct. Yeah. It was technically home of the San Marino Grand Prix for the longest time. At one point or another, they actually had the Italian Grand Prix, which is housed at Monza. When it couldn't be held at Monza, it was held there, and then changed its name to Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, which we've seen since the 2020 or something like that.
Yeah, and so being called Imola is because it's of the town that it's next to, or that it's in, rather.
Correct. Yeah.
I find this kind of interesting because there's some areas of the world where you will have multiple names for like this one little area.
Yeah,
so I think it's kind of cool.
And that's the case. So you'll hear folks saying Imola a lot. I think that's like the most common. When you talk about this race, you're not really saying Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. You're really saying Imola. And Imola, like you said, is the city, and Emilia Romagna is the northern region. It's the region in which they're. That's the region that the town's in. Correct.
Yeah,
and
cool.
The broader town is Bologna. Bologna.
Yes.
So, but let's just say Imola for short. Where there's lots of history, lots of really cool things that happen there. Lots of rivalries. I believe it was the first time it was held. One of the biggest and saddest rivalries kind of started and ended very, very short after it started. With the Ferrari team, they had Didier Pironi and Gilles Villeneuve.
Yeah,
and there was like team orders back when this race was starting, and the team order was whoever made the first corner and the first turn, whoever was in front would lead. However, there was a couple restarts, and at first you had Villeneuve leading, and up until that race, there's basically there was some friction between the fighting, and they didn't want to lose both cars. In the infighting for position. So they had set up these team orders. They said, okay, whoever gets to the first corner takes it, and you can't really pass on track. So Villeneuve was set to basically win that race. There was a restart, and Pironi decided, well, it's a restart, so if I get they had
Right.
a stop start sort of
Mhm.
situation. So on the restart, Peroni took the lead from Villeneuve and ended up winning the race.
Mhm.
And so because of this, Villeneuve had decided and had stated that their friendship was over, that he would never talk to him again.
Gosh.
And very dramatic, but not really, because he was super upset about it. Sadly, it would kind of be true, because Villeneuve actually died like 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he ended up crashing out at Zandvoort, I think. So
Wow.
really, really sad, but kind of, again, some of the history we see in at what was then San Marino at
Mhm.
Imola. And then after that, one of the biggest situations we had seen, or I guess sad, was what they call the blackest day in motorsport,
Mhm.
or the darkest weekend in all of F1, because in 1994, you had a couple of deaths, two in one race. You had Ronald Ratzenberger, who in qualifying had hit, I believe it was Villeneuve corner, hit the outside wall, and he just never made it out.
Mhm.
He had what they call a skull. It was a skull fracture,
Oh,
right,
wow.
right at the base of the skull. So
Yeah.
it's where I think it was the highest G forces ever recorded on a crash, 500 Gs,
Oh my
straight into the
gosh.
wall. And the same type of thing that killed American Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Mhm.
Basically, your head goes forward
Yeah.
and basically like decapitates you, sort of thing,
Dang.
and you start bleeding like spinal fluid from your nose and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough.
So um, a little story about him was that he was actually in Formula One for not very long. He was a rookie, and that was like the third race he was starting, because he
Dang.
hadn't qualified in a few of the other races.
Mhm.
So from Austria, and yeah, hit the wall at 100, like
Mhm.
95 miles an hour.
Gosh.
Crazy, died instantly, and
Mhm.
it was just his third entry, which is kind of sad. And then we have Senna, the very next day after the death of Roland. Uh, the race basically started. Everybody was a little gloomy. There was lots of things that just didn't feel right in that
Mhm.
on that day. And basically leading up to that race, you had Senna um, complaining about the car at Williams. So kind of taking it back a little further, when Senna left McLaren, which was the kind of one of the highlights of his career. He had won with them a whole lot and had some of the best qualifyings in that McLaren MP4,
Mhm.
MP48, on all those cars.
Just like the car that anybody that doesn't even know about F1, like,
Can picture,
yeah,
right? The red,
pictures.
the white,
Yeah.
the Marlboro on the side,
Mhm.
exactly. So having left McLaren, he wasn't winning anymore. So he went to what's the better car, right?
Mhm.
And that was the Williams, the basically the best car, that was the most technological. But at the time, the FIA wanted to bring down the amount of technology, I guess, that some of
Okay.
these cars were having. And at the start of the season, with Williams, he actually hadn't scored a point and was barely finishing. So um, he had asked for some upgrades. They had updated his steering column to make it a little higher. They did some things with his with ride height as well, and they were doing some fixes to the car to make it more to Senna's liking. And unfortunately, the day of, in Imola, that obviously there was the death of Roland. The race started, and there was a at the very beginning there was an accident where one of the cars just didn't take off, and another car from behind didn't react fast enough, so he hit the car that was standing still at the start, and right off the bat, that crash caused basically some bystanders to get hurt because a wheel went flying off the car, and it was actually the second time in all of F1 where you actually had a safety car. So a safety car normally never happened. It was more of a American thing, and they had introduced the safety car, and it was like a little square Opel car that was super slow. So they had brought him out, and at the very start that the car came out, Senna leading the race, getting followed by Michael Schumacher, goes up to the safety car and basically signals for him to go. Hey, go faster, right? And the guy's going flat out, so he can't go that fast. So what you have happen to Senna and all the guys behind him is basically the tire temperature is falling, right? So the car is going to be acting differently than it would normally because you're losing tire temperature, tire pressure, all that thing, all that sort of stuff's kind of out of whack. And just like now, where we have the low ground effect cars, right? The cars are very low; they get sucked down to the ground to create the downforce. This is an iteration of what they had before. So back in those days, they were all ground effect cars, and they needed to be super low to the ground. And any variations in your tires, if they were cold or something, they could expand the amount of height and how low it is, or maybe it's bottoming out, losing that downforce, etc. So as the race restarts, Senna's leading and getting chased by Michael Schumacher at the time, and he gets close to Tamburello, the corner, and basically can't turn the car, crashes into the car, and the rest is kind of history. He ends up hitting the wall really, really fast, but not as fast as the guy before him. The day before, his was 135 miles an hour, and it was said that he probably could have walked away from it, but because the car had basically broken on impact, the front suspension and the wheel basically hit the wall and bounced back into the cockpit. Basically, gave him like a brain injury, went through his visor, and he was gone, more or less. Yeah. So unfortunately, we lost him there at that corner, and it was a very sad day for the sport, and but also like a moment of change for the FIA Formula One, because they then introduced changes to most of the tracks, like adding chicanes. They ended up changing the track, Imola itself, so it wasn't a fast, full-on corner. They added a chicane right before that corner, and then also before the Villeneuve corner. So, and that's, I guess, super important, now, because it's obviously the 30th anniversary of Senna and his death. And it was really nice this weekend because what we were able to see was Sebastian Vettel come out of retirement and drive his MP48. And it was very emotional. I guess Sebastian had spoken to Senna's family back in Brazil and asked to see if, this is something they'd be interested in doing. And they were all for it. And they took the car out. And for anybody who's ever witnessed a 1980s era ground effect car, it's amazing, especially in like 4K or 1080p,
right?
Not in like the 90s or 80s, like low resolution TVs, but it was beautiful to see. And they did a really nice little tribute to him, and at the very end, Sebastian came out with both the Brazilian flag, obviously to honor Senna, but also the Austrian flag to honor Roland Ratzenberger. So very beautiful thing.
His helmet too. I think it had half of it was Senna, and I think half of it may have been Roman. I'm not 100% sure on the other half.
I believe so. Yeah.
But it was pretty cool that he was doing that. It's kind of a testament to Senna and his impact on people. You know, here we are 30 years later, and all the drivers have this huge respect for him.
Yeah.
Different drivers today were wearing helmets that kind of match some of the colors, or
right,
kind of out of respect. There's been other little ceremonies that they've had throughout the years as well. But I think there was a time like his one of the helmets was given to Lewis Hamilton.
I remember that was a very emotional moment.
Record, but it was like Senna was his who he looked up to in racing.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool thing. I think everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people would hope, 30 years after your passing, that you'd be remembered by other people in a positive light.
Right. Exactly.
Impacting their lives. I think is a really cool thing. Really cool thing for Senna.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And his family. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the race this weekend was pretty cool. I mean, going into the weekend, we had seen Ferrari coming on into the race with some upgrades, ready to please their crowd.
Yeah.
And they came in, brought some new floor. What we expect is, I guess the understanding is that they had done some changes to their floor, because what they did was basically change their side pods, some of the cooling and some of the airflow over the top of the car, indicating a lot of changes underneath, as well as like some changes towards the side mirrors and things like that. So there was a very interesting F1 Tech Talk that kind of went through some of those changes, and they kind of took some inspiration from Alpine and Red Bull, kind of getting that like boot inlet for some of the air cooling.
Okay, good.
Which I think is like the direction most of the teams are going. And then some very nice sculpted engine covers that I hadn't seen before, where it's almost like a letter B, where it kind of like curves twice. It's very, very nice looking car. Whatever they're doing, it seems to have helped them, or at least helped them keep up, because obviously we saw what happened with McLaren last week.
Right.
Basically, their one upgrade shot them straight up to the top.
They had a great upgrade.
Yeah. You know what though? It seems like now if you're not the one upgrading your car, investing in, getting making progress, it's like you're going down. And it's going to be a steep decline if you're not keeping the pace with those other cars that are just, it doesn't matter if they're the best, they're like constantly trying to get better and better and better.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, just for instance, like Williams, they're actually a lot better this year than they were last year, but they're actually worse in the rankings this year than they were last year, because everybody else has improved so much.
Right. Exactly.
And yeah. So it's pretty cool that Ferrari did some upgrades other than getting rid of those blue wheels. I didn't like those, but yeah, they're I think they're on the right path. Fred, it's interesting watching Fred, seeing some of the interviews with him, how calm, how like he doesn't give anything away. They'll ask him direct questions about the improvements, how this is going to impact things on the track, and he'll just tell him, he's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. But it's in a nice way, but it's like, hey, he's confident. He's cool and collected about where they're going as a team, how their direction is going, and that they're making incremental increases. He's like, hey, we're just 7th race in. There's plenty more races this year. We're moving in the right direction. But it seems like his whole team has this happy positive vibe, not like happy-go-lucky necessarily, but like this real positive, upbeat vibe about them. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, they're at one of their home tracks this year or this week, of course, but
I think morale has definitely changed.
Mhm.
It's there.
yeah,
From from what I was reading was that some of the mechanics and everybody, I guess, in that team is all like, they're like, okay, he's instilling us this like aggressive, but also like, make rest, like just make it happen, and everybody seems to be like really into Fred and what he's bringing to that team.
it's pretty fascinating to see, and I think that's something that it's going to be interesting for all of us to watch is how that team develops, because they've brought over some different individuals from other teams. They're working in the mechanic shop and in the office and everything. But then you've also got Hamilton coming over. There's talks about Newey. Nothing definitive yet, but that's up there. So what's going to happen? I mean, but he's kind of creating this buzz around Ferrari. Like it's not only is it still the place to be, it's the place where everybody wants to be,
Right.
and more so than what it used to be. It's
That's
pretty
true.
cool.
Yeah, no,
That's a hard thing to do. I mean, usually like you'll go to work and you'll have places that they'll have really positive vibes, but over time that kind of erodes, and it's really hard to get that back.
yeah.
So.
I mean, he's just a leader. I think
Mhm.
he brought that to his other teams, so it makes sense that he would bring it with him to Ferrari.
Yeah.
And you just see his character. He is a character. So the type of guy I'd like to work for.
Yeah, he is. He is. Mm-hmm. So we've got a Ferrari, and then we also have McLaren coming in. Last week in Miami, they did their upgrades. This week, Piastri got half of the upgrades last time. This time he gets the full upgrades. So you're looking going, okay, was last week a fluke? Because or was it real? And I think it was pretty real. And they go out and basically prove that it is. So
I mean, we talked about, could they do it on track and not with the safety car? And what they showed is they're right there.
Yeah.
If they can do it on track,
all the practices, they were great, and the qualifyings, they were great.
And give them one more lap this race, and we would have been there. Yeah,
maybe.
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, the Red Bull, they seem like McLaren and Ferrari are catching them. Maybe it's just incremental. Maybe it's even more than that. It's somewhat maybe a little bit difficult to say because Max Verstappen being such a great driver.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they don't do something, they will get caught. Will it be this next week? Will it be a little bit in a week or two, or a few more races down the line? Possibly. But if they don't make some good upgrades, they're going to get caught.
Yeah, well, from what I understood is that they did bring upgrades, and it seems like they couldn't get a handle of their upgrades. And if it weren't for Max just being Max, I don't think it. In any other driver in that car would have been probably there with Checo right at the tail end of the top three, right? So
it was interesting hearing him in practice, like his race radio, because he was talking about how he can't do this, can't do that with the car. It needs this, that, and the other. And I think that they were able to. I basically like that car was so off. Like if it was racing the way it started at practice one, no, it would not have done well. But he was able to work with the team, get it in a winnable position, and then come out and perform and secure pole position, which was amazing.
Well, I think it was a surprise for everybody, really.
Yeah,
I didn't expect that.
Yeah,
to happen.
I think people were pretty questionable. like I mean, everybody like
it's
the
like,
week.
Oh, it was just Max. He just did it because he just needed to, but.
Yeah.
From where? Who knows? How did that happen?
Right.
Nobody expected.
Yeah. And then he pulls it out. Somehow he just is able to do that and able to get in and get the fastest time for qualifying, which was pretty impressive, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And he ties actually Ayrton Senna's record of 8 pole positions in a row.
Oh, pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know what I noticed? That when something seems to go wrong, or that car isn't dialed in with Max, and it's double so with Checo, but when that car's not in the right window, it seems like it just kind of it's like a little avalanche of like, okay, it's a problem. It's a problem. Like they really can't get a hold of it. Like they can't get it to the right spot. And we were noticing that towards the end. It's like the Max can't control the front, and it's kind of over. I don't know.
Yeah, that's one of the things he was complaining about as the race was going on. But
yeah,
let's get a little bit into the race. So with this race, like there's not a lot of overtaking on this track. So so it's very important. One, qualifying, where you're qualifying in the grid is extremely important, because you're probably going to stay around that spot. Now there is a high potential for some safety cars to come out, and so everybody's basically banking on, there's probably 99, 100% chance that's going to happen, right? So there's that. So which also puts you at how you got to get off to a great start. You got to get around and get a good position right from the start. So everybody's watching that. Start goes off. The top 5, they're all staying in the same place. I think
it was a clean start for everybody.
Yeah, I think the V carbs like actually dropped back.
They dropped. They're the only ones.
They're the only ones that dropped back.
They had an excellent quality.
Yeah, they had an excellent quality. They were all like in the top 10 to start with. So, from the very first second, like when Verstappen started, Norris is in P2, and Norris starts to kind of catch up just for a second, but then like once Verstappen gets into the throttle, then he kind of pulls away from him.
Yeah, it kind of gets him out of that DRS zone too.
Yeah, and he takes off. Yeah, so he's like really pushing it to be sure that he's out of the DRS zone, because there's only one on this circuit. So, so it was within 5-6 laps. I mean, he's continually like increasing his lead. Everything's looking good for him. And the race, like overall, because there's not a lot of overtakes, you're thinking, okay, well, there's not a wreck at the very beginning. Nobody does anything. There were a few times where different cars kind of touched wheels. There were a few overpasses that were pretty impressive. Yuki had a couple, or at least one that was pretty impressive. Yeah, Hamilton, I think, had some. But so you started out like Red Bull. They started out. You had Verstappen on the mediums, Perez on the hards. So Perez is going to try to go as long as he possibly can. See how that kind of works out.
It's just that Red Bull just could not work on those hards, though.
Right, but I think some of the strategy was pretty sound, though, because if he's going a longer distance, and because he started off in
11th.
Yeah, he started off 11th. So his race, like they're going to try to get him to score some points at least.
Yeah.
But also, like, is there any way that he can help Verstappen out? So they have him pit, and he comes out of the pit, and and I think there's one spot where Norris pits, and when Norris comes out, he's behind Perez, and so they're fairly close. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe Perez can hold him up for a lap or two. Very first chance that he has to pass him, he does. And so I was like, well, there goes that. But
same thing with the Ferrari. He just let them go. He's just like, I'm not going to mess with it.
I think, it
was strange. It was strange
because I was like, okay, are the tires really that far gone?
Yeah.
And if they are, why didn't they pull him into the pits? And if not, like, why didn't he at least try something to hold him off with?
And there were some guys who were also doing a long stint on the mediums.
Yeah.
He could have just gone in, gotten some mediums, and done a long stint on the mediums if the car was better on the mediums.
Yeah.
Instead, he was staying on the bad hards for a long time, like waiting for a safety car or something. It was silly.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. Now, he ends up moving up, final place, spoiler alert, he comes in at 8th.
Yeah.
So, starting from 11th on a track that's not known for being able to overtake. That's all right.
Yeah, it's not bad. But
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, it's still a Red Bull.
Yeah, no, but it's like, okay, he's expected to be fighting for a podium.
He lost on Saturday. That's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't make it out of Q2. Very strange. And he was the last one to the line. You would almost expect that being the last one to the line, you'd have like the fastest lap.
Yeah.
Going into Q3. Instead, he got a lap right behind Ricciardo, which made it to Q1. Q3.
Yeah.
So very strange performance. Anonymous, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So there were a lot of interesting things going on during the race, but a lot of it, like, some people may consider it a very boring race because there's not a lot of overtaking. Yeah. There's a lot of technical driving, a lot of defensive driving. And so that kind of makes it exciting. But to me, at least, what made it really exciting was how Norris was pushing Verstappen. And it comes down near the end.
Yeah.
He's in second place. Verstappen's leading. And Norris is he's picking up the pace, and he's catching up with Verstappen. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, crap, he's going to catch him. Like, if he keeps catching up to these increments each lap, he's going to catch him. But you know that, his tires are going to degrade some, so it's not going to be the exact same. So it's like you're sitting on the edge of your seat all the way to the very end. Like, is he going to catch him? Is he not? And Verstappen, is going to have to defend, which I'm so used to seeing Verstappen just drive off and leave everybody.
Right.
And then we all talk about how great he is because he wins, but then he doesn't really ever have to fight for his position all the time. Like, I mean, he has in the past, but recently. So we get to see how he's going to defend and how he can drive defensively. And evidently he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He
did a good job.
Yeah.
His car was not faster than Norris's, at least in that last stint, but his battery power was failing him or dropped down significantly. They showed a chart with it. With Norris was at 60%, he was at 30%.
Yeah.
So he was losing grip on his tires,
and he had a black and white flag too, I think, for
that's
track
right.
limits. So
so if
he would have gone over track limits one more time, it'd have been 5-second penalty. And he was at one point 3 seconds, and then he ended up 2 seconds.
Yeah, because he was at 5 or 6 seconds with about 10 laps to go.
Yeah.
And then it just kept dwindling down. And when he got to just a few laps left, he's under, right around a second to 2 seconds. And I'm thinking, man, Norris is probably going to get it. But then he's got the dirty air that he's got to face, that he has to fight with at that point. And that's that. And then Verstappen just being able to keep that thing on the rails. He just dialed in mentally.
I think
was able to get it.
Verstappen got lucky. Another track with more DRS zones.
That's true.
And then this is a short and quick lap, right? So had it been a longer lap, more DRS zones, maybe even one more lap altogether, I think Norris takes it.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if 3 laps, definitely,
for sure.
Yeah, 1 lap possibly, but those last few laps, man, he was definitely driving that thing.
Yeah.
It was exciting to see. I wasn't sure for a little bit. I was thinking, man, he's actually gonna do it, and then no, we didn't.
It was close.
And then you also you had the battle, so Piastri, he had a penalty in qualifying.
Yeah.
So it was 3-place start penalty. I'm not saying that right.
3 grid.
You guys know.
Yeah.
So he's starting in 5th instead of in 2nd, and so the whole race, it seems like he's behind Ferrari the whole time.
Yeah.
Either Sainz or Leclerc, and he's always kind of pushing him through most of the race, but he just can't pass him. And some of that's just the track. Some of it you wonder, okay, well, dude, what's going on?
Is it a mental thing?
Well, but then again, maybe it's a McLaren thing, with this version of the car, because I mean, Norris wasn't able to pass Verstappen at the end, but I don't know.
I mean, we've talked about it in the past, right? I mean, it was in memes for a while that what's Piastri see, but Hamilton's rear,
he has a fascination for the rear tail.
Exactly. He just likes hanging out behind other cars. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe he's got to take that lunge once in a while.
Yeah.
Did he get close? He got pretty close. At some points, he was 2 seconds away from these guys. I get it. Hard track to pass, equal-ish cars at the moment. So I don't know, man. I think he could have done a little bit better, but
yeah. Yeah. So the Ferraris, though, even with their upgrades, they did well.
Yeah,
Sainz wasn't quite as fast, but Leclerc was able to podium. So we get end of the day, Verstappen on first, Norris second, and Leclerc third. So the Tifosi, they get their Ferrari
they
on the
get
podium.
their Ferrari on the podium. Yeah,
It's
for
pretty
sure.
cool to see. Like, I don't know if you guys were watching it, but as soon as the race is over, they open up one of the gates. It's right in front of the start and finish grid, and they all just come running. Like it's the sea of people wearing red, running like mad people. To get in front of
it's pretty
the podium.
Cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then they were just like gathered all across the grid, across the racetrack.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I've noticed that Leclerc has been kind of like, okay, he was overshadowed the first couple of races, but he's coming back, and he's taken Perez's second place in the championship as well. So
that's true.
I'd like to see what he has coming up for Monaco, because that's our next race, right? So
hometown for him.
Hometown race for Leclerc, and we know he's had really bad luck there. So can he do something special? Yeah. Maybe it's his moment. Who knows?
It very well could be, because that car, I mean, if they qualify well, very well could.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, they're all right there together.
That's a Saturday.
It is so close.
Yeah, it's a Saturday race. Whoever however they qualify, if they have good track position and not a horrendous pit stop, it's going to be dictated by Saturday. So we'll see. Very hard to pass there. So
yeah,
and unfortunately, Leclerc's had bad luck. So
he has, but
more than most.
But at the same time, he's been on the podium 40-something times.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years since he's won anything, but or won the race. But he's good things.
Good things to come for sure.
Yeah,
and I'd like to see Sainz show something a little bit more special, like in the beginning too. So we'll see what he can bring. But I'm excited for Monaco. What are your predictions for Monaco?
Ooh, that's tough, man. After this race and watching McLaren, watching Ferrari, and seeing how close they are to RB, Verstappen still. I still see him on the podium. I think Norris could easily be there again. Leclerc, Piastri. I mean, they're all driving great.
They're all driving good. Yeah.
I think Norris and Piastri right now are they're kind of like top form for themselves. Like they've reached a new form level. I think their car has reached a new level.
Yeah.
So that's going to stick around for a little bit. I don't know how long, but that it might be Monaco might be in their window. But I still see Verstappen.
It's a toss up.
It really is. It's
Who do you
so
choose?
close. I think those.
But
you got to
choose somebody.
Those are the top four. So I mean, I would say like you're looking at a similar podium as the Imola race.
Okay.
I think Leclerc may come in second. He might come in first. But I would say if I have to pick, I would say Verstappen, Leclerc, then Norris.
Okay. I say Verstappen, Perez, Norris.
You're going to throw Perez in there.
I'm going to throw Perez in there because he is king of the streets.
He wasn't last year in Monaco.
No, not last year in Monaco, but the year before he did win it.
Well, and he may do very well. Perez, like, that's not,
and he needs a contract, really, so he's got to.
That's not
after
a bad
this weekend.
pick.
He's got to bring it.
Yeah,
so.
He had a bad weekend, but really, like when you look at Perez and like his bad weekends, like it's usually because he's pushing it really hard and he makes like a tiny error.
Yeah.
But it's just enough, and hasn't been at a good time.
Yeah.
But then, like, if he doesn't, if he continues to push and that error doesn't happen, then he's even in a better position, and then you're not talking about, you had a bad day.
Yeah.
So he's a pretty aggressive driver.
Yeah.
So he very well could.
Yeah.
He's got the car.
We'll see. I'm excited for it. So it's the crown jewel. So
the crown jewel.
The crown jewel of motorsport. Yeah. Yeah. I'm super psyched.
Yeah. It's going to be good times, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Monaco, next week. We're not skipping a weekend.
Mm-mm.
I think that's about all that
Yeah,
we've got.
I think that's it.
There's some cool stuff coming out that we'll probably talk more about this in the future. But there is a show coming out on Netflix about Senna. I don't remember
timing.
the date that it's coming out, but it's soon, if I remember
And it's
correctly.
in Portuguese, right?
It may be in Portuguese,
Like
so
half Portuguese. Half.
so we'll interpret for you. Actually, we won't. Netflix will. They'll have the closed captions posted on there. But but
The trailer looks great.
the trailer looked really cool. And honestly, like some shows that have the closed captions, it's hard for me to read. This one actually looked pretty cool, pretty easy. Like it flowed for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be good. I'm excited about that. So we'll talk. We'll probably have some more Senna talk in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So guys, thank you for joining us on another adventure with Pushbox Banter.
Yeah. You know what to do on your platforms. Like,
Yes.
comment, subscribe.
Yes, you know what to do. We trust you.
Yes. Well, Craig,
Daniel.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.